Hi, welcome to Chat Communications Happenings and Trends. If you're new to our channel, welcome. And if you are a returning viewer, welcome back. We have a few stories to get through today, and I'm just going to jump right in. We are going to take calls a little bit later in the stream. So first, we're going to talk about Canada and Saudi Arabia. So yesterday, Canada's, I don't know who she was, but an official for the Canadian government tweeted out against the human rights abuses that Saudi Arabia does engage in. And there was no conflict really there. Everybody knows that Saudi Arabia does do these human rights abuses. And as you know, a retaliation of some sort, they ended up threatening Canada in kind of a 9/11 type of threat. And we do have the tweet available for you, so I will show that now as soon as I can. And all right, so here's the tweet. It says, as the Arabic saying goes, he who interferes with what doesn't concern him finds what doesn't please him. And it's clearly a picture of an airline or an airliner going right directly towards a building, well-known needlepoint building in Canada. Wow, I just am flabbergasted that they did that as a response, because how measured of a response is that, right? It's very dangerous rhetoric, obviously. And I mean, it just goes to you how kind of stupid the American people are, or at least ignorant about the situation with 9/11, thinking that, again, that Iraq did the whole thing, or when it was initiated by a group of people from Saudi Arabia. And I mean, this is a clear sign of that, and they're very brazen in their response. As of today, Saudi Arabia has basically expulsed or kicked out the Canadian ambassador that was to Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia has also demanded or mandated that all the students that are studying abroad in Canada return or go elsewhere. This is clearly dangerous rhetoric, and it's clearly kind of over a very weird response, considering that a lot of people do call out Saudi Arabia on their human rights abuses quite consistently. Unfortunately, it doesn't get done in the United States very often, but it does by other governments and governmental agencies around the world, and Canada is no exception to this. But of course, this is their response, because nothing says you don't, engage in human rights abuses by more than basically threatening murder, threatening on a massive scale. That makes a lot of sense. Janet, what are your thoughts?
Hey, yeah, so they posted up this. It was a group, and supposedly they're saying it's a youth group, the infographic group. So they're trying to downplay it, definitely. They actually took the group, told them they had to get offline. They had to take down their Twitter account because of this. But I mean, I don't know why they would. Yes, they were saying that they were trying to depict the ambassador going home, but yeah, you don't do that towards a building. The CN Tower, and it's just that's just nuts. I mean, that it is totally going to, and who wouldn't think that it's going to bring up images of 9/11? I mean, yeah, I mean, maybe it was an error, but it's still, I don't know. With what happened, I don't know. It just seems way over the top that they posted that. It's like you're teasing. Like, are we getting into this rhetoric of, like, because Donald Trump teases other politicians and teases other world leaders? Is that what it's going to come down to? That we're going to put these stupid graphics and say these stupid things on Twitter about other people instead of using diplomacy and talking about it like they should be, like together.
Well, I think that one reason why they have such an extreme response to not even like the prime minister even criticizing Saudi Arabia, right, is definitely because of Donald Trump and his, not only his rhetoric but also his stance. You know, I mean, I'm sure Obama would probably be like, we need to use diplomacy, settle down. But then the United States are currently like, we're out of it. This has nothing to do with us. And so you kind of know exactly. I mean, we are emboldening these authoritarian leaders. That's all it comes down to. We're siding on behalf of these leaders a lot of the time in many cases, and we are definitely using militaristic tones and more militaristic, I guess, strategies over any type of diplomacy. At least that's where I'm sitting. That's what I've seen. I haven't seen anybody try to diffuse this, at least on the United States' side. And
I think.
Go ahead, Lauren. You had a point.
I think. First of all, I think that post is kind of them, kind of maybe bragging about doing 9/11 or having Saudi group do 9/11. And like, second of all, you're like, yeah, you're right. Like Saudi Arabia is emboldened by the West, and it's not only because of like Donald Trump's rhetoric. It's also because like we're funding them. Like we're like Canada, the UK, and the US and France are funding them. So like they're emboldened by the West as a whole. Like, well, we're just encouraging it.
Now I see an issue with what Amanda said, saying, okay, let's say, okay, we're going to stay out of it. Well, our whole point in what we've done in the past, how many decades, like since 1940s, we were the world leader. We put our nose in everything. So now we're just going to put our nose into what we want and then totally ignore when something like this comes up to our greatest ally, like our neighbor and greatest ally. We're gonna just allow that, and that's just wrong. It's wrong. I mean, we can't. Why we let the Saudis get away with everything we do, or that we're even backing them? I mean, it just I don't know. It makes me so angry.
And speaking to that is like, yeah, we stick our nose in every place where sometimes it just does not even belong. And then when this happens, and again, our closest ally and our direct neighbor to the north, Canada, is basically getting threatened, is having their ambassador kicked out of Saudi Arabia, and then the students are told to like get out of the country from Canada. And I mean, we aren't going to back Canada, but we are going to back the Saudi Arabia in their genocide against the Yemeni people. I mean, it's really messed up. The state of the world, guys, it's messed up. It's probably always been this way, but I don't know. I feel like it's a bit more tumultuous as of late. At least that's how I've perceived it, and I've watched world politics for a long time. Too long, probably. I'm aging rapidly. Can't you guys tell? This is aging me too fast. All right. Y'all ready to move on?
Yeah, we can move
on. Which one? Alex Jones or Portland?
Let's do Jones.
Okay.
I know no one wants to hear it, but
well, I mean, there may be some people that want to hear it and want to also understand what our perspectives are, because I feel like a lot of people's perspectives are not as nuanced as they should be, and then some people that do have more of a nuanced perspective on this don't really get heard out, because a lot of people do have that kind of a dichotomous black or white type of thinking, and I wish that we could stop, because we can think about a lot of things in a multitude of ways. Anyways, Alex Jones. He was kicked off of a few platforms over the last, I guess, 48 hours. That includes Facebook, Twitter, and his YouTube channel was, I think, terminated completely, or was it just some episodes? I think it was terminated completely. Anyways, so there's been people on the left and the right basically stating that, oh, he's an independent journalist, you guys shouldn't silence him, and things along those lines. And there's also people that can see that some of the things that he says and the rhetoric he does, he and what he advocates for is very violent. It's very violent rhetoric, and I don't want to go and default to, well, you know, on these particular private run company platforms, you know, they get to decide who gets to be on that space and not. Technically, that's true. That's a technicality that is absolutely 100% true. I also want to mention that Alex Jones is dangerous. He's a dangerous human being with the rhetoric he does. You have people, and one of the primary reasons that I would imagine he would have gotten kicked off, I thought he'd be kicked off a lot sooner, to be perfectly honest. But one of the reasons I would have him get kicked off of any platform, he needs to be deplatformed, is because of the fact that you have people, children that were massacred, 5-year-old children in Sandy Hook a few years ago. They were gunned down. And he basically stated that was a false flag operation to have everybody's guns taken away, which fucking bullshit. Nothing happened, by the way. Nothing happened. There was no universal background checks were not passed at that time. Nothing happened. Anyways, still is telling people that it's a false flag. Then you have the people, the parents that were mourning these children that are getting death threats from his audience. And they can't, there are people that cannot visit their child's grave because of the threat that poses to them to do so today. And this happened years ago, guys. This wasn't like last year. This was what, 4 or 5 years ago that this happened. And yeah, he should have been deplatformed then. I was shocked that he was still had a channel, to be perfectly honest, because, and then the whole Pizzagate thing, you know, and then somebody showing up with a weapon there to massacre people that were, that owned that pizza place. Like he's crazy, and he feeds into a very violent and crazy audience. And he knows that. And he knows his audience. And he's a dangerous person. He should have been gone a long time ago. And anybody defending him, I just have no respect for you. I do understand the defense of, well, because these media companies, there's 3 of them. I think this was Glenn Greenwald's defense, that, you know, that's a problem, that these companies get to dictate who's on their platform and who's not on their platform. Yeah, I agree with that. That is a problem. But in that case of Alex Jones, get him the fuck off. That is not the problem. He is the problem. He is another problem. Those in my mind can exist to be separate problems. And I don't know why they can't exist to be separate problems in other people's minds, because they should. Alex Jones is dangerous. He should be gone. He should not have a voice. Check. We should also not have 3 companies telling us what to do. Check. Those are completely separate issues that need to be tackled in completely separate manners. Go for it. What's your thoughts, guys?
Like Alex his career's been nothing but harassing people and spreading libel. Like he's not even, like, to call him a journalist is fucking insulting. And like, he just shouldn't have had a platform to begin with, because I think one of his faces on, like, post on Facebook was like, burn all cross-dressers or something like that. Like, he's fucking insane and dangerous, and he's a fascist, and defending his free speech, quote unquote, is fucking ridiculous, because, like, he would have everyone else's free speech shut down in a goddamn instant. Like, it's just, I did a giant thread on it about Twitter, but it's just fucking absurd. And, like, anyone who considers themselves on the left defending this shit, I'm pretty fucking suspicious of. Because that's just, he's not a legitimate person. Like, he should not have had a platform to begin with. He's dangerous.
Well, I'll say that I totally agree with Amanda's thing that it is two totally different issues. I also have to say, like, I mean, Alex Jones has put himself out there. He even claims that he's, you know, he acts this way, that it's an act to get out of other things, though his wife in an interview with Jeff said no, that's how he normally is anyways. But I mean, he can't have it both ways. You can't say that what he says is just an act, and he can't also sit there and scream about First Amendment rights, which is just completely whacked, because I mean, he has done plenty of hate speech, and that is not covered under the First Amendment. So like to sit there and you know, I understand Glenn getting worried. I understand that. We see that in the media. We're fighting to get, you know, the Yemen stuff up on the media, where they're saying, you know, it's not going to, you know, they're saying it's not ratings and stuff like that, but you know, it's not pleasing their donors, their advertisers. I keep calling them donors lately because of politicians, but I mean, it's not pleasing them. So yeah, I mean, I understand that we need to battle, you know, mainstream media. We need to battle you know, the platforms, the social media platforms, to you know, tell us exactly what we're doing wrong if we violate something, and you know, to have a clearer TOS out there, terms of service and everything. But when you're an account like Alex Jones and you're being told all the time that you're doing things wrong and that you can't do this, and that you blatantly are just saying things that violate the TOSs of these companies, then I can't feel bad for you for getting shut off of them. But it's not your First Amendment right. You still can go somewhere else and say whatever you want.
Yeah, that was the point that I was about to make. I'm like, he can go out into the street and shout whatever the fuck he wants to, right? I mean, yeah, and then I have the right to tell him to fuck off and to shut the fuck up too, because that's my freedom of speech. But then, like, I don't think, you know, anybody's going to tell him he can't be on a public place and be like, you can't do this, unless it's hate speech or it's insightful speech of violence, right? Which he does. I mean, wasn't it yesterday or something like that, you know, in relation to Robert Mueller, that he's like, we're gonna, you know, getting all huff and puffy about it, we're gonna take Robert Mueller and, you know, out and drag him out in the streets and, you know, do something, you know, basically threatening to kill Robert Mueller. Oh, and then he goes, politically, you know,
he also had like Roger Stone on to like talk about a civil war and things like that. But also, I want to point out that if you go to like InfoWars term of services, like if you want to become I guess they have forums and stuff like that. So if you want to like become a member on there, they have terms of services that are almost exactly the same and tell you explicitly that you will get kicked off or banned if you violate these certain set of rules. So it's just fucking nonsense either way.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I'm glad. I hope. And my biggest problem, to be perfectly honest about this whole thing, other than like the whole media issue, which that again is another issue. He is not a fucking independent journalist, period. That is another issue. But that he's going to be a martyr, right? He's going to be the martyr for the right to be like, look how much they're persecuted. They already have such a huge persecution complex, right? I want to be able to say these helpful things and incite violence with impunity. You know what? Fuck you guys. Like, I'm done with the right wing. I'm done with them. Like, my patience for them is gone. It's not like you should ever have patience for them to begin with, but they're just too far gone. They're so sensitive. I mean, they are the most sensitive group of people you will ever meet. And that's why it's all these projections. Oh, you're the snowflake. That's a fucking projection. You're shutting down my free speech. That's a projection. You're the fascist. That's a projection. All of it. That's all they've got. and really shitty ideas. But shitty ideas and projection, and that's it. That's all they're about. And then they want to bitch and whine and moan about it too. And that's like my biggest concern, because it just gives them more reason to bitch and whine and moan. And frankly, I'm tired of hearing them bitch and whine and moan about shit. And I don't think anybody on the left should be bitching and whining and moaning for them. They can do it perfectly on their own. They do not need your help. That includes Jimmy Dore. They do not need Jimmy Dore's help. Okay? They got this. They are the best at bitching and whining and moaning about shit. So he can shut up. Glenn Greenwald can fucking shut up too.
I think like you know, they want to make it. They see that it's happening to the left, and they want to make it, and they're still trying to co-opt the left over to them. That's how I feel about these things. Like they want us to feel guilty because we're the ones that, you know, have empathy. We're the ones that think about these things and try to say, you know, everybody is the same, and this is, you know, this is where our brains are at. You know, I mean, this is what we believe. But there are nuances, as Amanda said, there's nuances to that, and you can't feel bad for someone that, you know, just sits there and spews stuff that makes hateful people go out and do things they should not be doing. I mean, the fact that this family can't even go to the grave of their son is just ridiculous. I mean, it is ridiculous.
It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking what it is. Like, these are private citizens that have lived through a tragedy. Most people should never have to live. Everybody, no one should have to live with that. No one. And then to have Congress do absolutely nothing. And then to have somebody like fucking Alex Jones come along and tell them that their child never even existed in the fucking first place. And then to have his crazy ass audience come out and give them death threats to the point where they've had to move and relocate hundreds of miles away. That is heartbreaking. That is something that no one should ever have to do and go through. And that was years ago, guys, and they're still getting death threats today because of Alex Jones. Like, nobody was saying it was a false flag until Alex Jones came along and said it. Nobody thought that. Everybody knew it was such a tragedy and saw it for what it was until Alex Jones said, this whole thing's fake. God, he's such a bad dude, guys. And anyone who defends him is a bad human being. That's what it comes down to. And yeah, they're just bad people. They're just bad people. And I get really depressed because I think of, like, how did he get his platform in the first place? It kind of goes back to what Lauren was saying. He should not have had a platform to begin with. You know, I heard your dog bark, I think. I didn't even know you had a dog. But he should never have had a platform to begin, which means is, like, how many people believe him? Like, are there really that many crazy people in the United States? I really hope not. I really hope not, because that's really depressing. Part of me thinks that there is, because these people see threats in everything, right? And one thing that our system does and does well is isolate us from each other. And one thing that our brain does when we get isolated is we start over-perceiving threats. And so when we start over-perceiving threats, we start being paranoid about shit. And so I can see why it has led to some people believing that their everything is threatened and then being attracted to that type of conspiracy theories. But at the same time, I'm like, when is logic going to just win out? Our brains are so archaic, guys. It's so sad. It's like every time I think we're making progress, we have to devolve backwards because our brains are so not used to having such a modern society. It just isn't.
And, like, let's not forget that Alex Jones is almost entirely responsible for starting the 9/11 truther shit.
Right. I completely forgot about that. You're right.
Yeah. I mean, like, his destruction goes back to the earlier mid-90s.
Oh, yeah, he's been around for a while, and I mean, there's nothing that I just I don't see it. I don't see this as a violation to his First Amendment. I do, and I totally get the independent media being worried about being kicked off. We've had things happen. I mean, look at what happened to Ed Schultz, Phil Donahue. I mean, we've had things like that happen. But those are the things I want to fight for. I want to fight for when someone is in the right saying stuff and is being taken down, not when someone's saying hateful, hurting things that, you know, I don't want to defend those people, and I shouldn't have to defend those people.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like I said, these are two distinct issues. One is we do have these very large corporations that get to mediate what we say because they do own all of these media sources. And another is the fact that he's doing hate speech and doing violence, and those are two separate issues. And like Janet, I do want to fight for the right to be able to challenge the media as they currently exist, to challenge those in power. That's what independent journalists should do. They should be the watchdogs of the government, and then not threatened, you know, to be deplatformed and things like that, because they are doing a service to humans, to humanity, to the public. They're offering a service by saying, this is what's going on, this is the truth, or whatever. You know, we have to dig up all the truth inside all of the bullshit or all of the hiding of information. I think the media, if anything, yeah, they have a slant, right? But if anything, they don't tell us what's going on. They focus on other bullshit things, like Stormy Daniels, for instance. Stormy Daniels, yeah, that happened. That's a real thing. They are reporting on a real incident. But maybe we can look at the war in Yemen and report on that too. And so they do that well.
If a more accepted conservative, like, I don't know, like Ben Shapiro, he's pretty accepted. He gets on CNN, you know, he's pretty accepted as like a normal conservative voice. If he was deplatformed and kicked off, like, I could kind of see the worry from independent journalists, but like it just doesn't apply with Alex Jones. Like, it just doesn't.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely different. Different type of thing. I don't think Ben Shapiro has ever said we should basically get guns and start shooting people or threatening of that variety.
He's definitely done racist and fucked up stuff, but nothing. Oh, yeah. He's not dangerous. He's not necessarily dangerous, especially when compared to Alex.
Yeah, Alex Jones is a dangerous human. He's dangerous. I'm just reading through some comments here.
I just want to mention, because Andrew said that Glenn didn't defend Jones, but what I'm referring to is a tweet that he quote tweeted. What's his name? Dahl. I wish I had it pulled up, but he quote tweeted someone from the left that's a lot smaller account than him that had said kind of like what we were saying, that he doesn't feel the need to defend Alex Jones on this, and he quote tweeted saying that this is terrible, horrible for all independent media and stuff like that. So maybe not so much that he defended Alex Jones directly, but he did hit on someone on the left for saying that we shouldn't be defending Alex Jones.
Right. Yeah. Is my microphone okay? So let's see. Mark mentioned, I guess in response to Lori, hate speech can be defended too because it is speech. So in the First Amendment, there is no exception to what free speech constitutes as. Now, I don't know, there may be some people that wouldn't be willing to defend hate speech for good reason, and the type of speech that does incite violence. But technically, per the First Amendment, you're right, there is no exception to what kind of speech is allowable or shouldn't be.
But there's other laws on top of it.
But
there's other laws that
there are other laws that do go into effect, like again the incitation of violence and things like that. But yeah. Let's see. Anything else? Any other comments, you guys? I don't know if my thing is running, but my computer's not really running very well. I didn't know that about Alex Jones.
Maybe not so much like defending Jones, but the fact that they want to use, like, this is not a good case. This isn't a good case. Like, say we were going to bring this case up to the Supreme Court. We're not going to want to use Alex Jones.
No,
like,
it would be a
like
very
this is not the case to fight, guys. Just let the, I don't know. I just feel like there's so many better cases that we need to fight for with people on their freedom of speech and stuff like that Alex Jones shouldn't even be on the radar.
Yeah, I agree. Plantastic Life, I was thinking about this yesterday, but they say anyone on a street corner who acts like Alex Jones would be brought to a loony bin. I was thinking about that yesterday. I think I was thinking about, like, if it weren't for the fact that he got onto YouTube's platform pretty early on, he would be like the weird guy living in like the basement of somebody else's house who, you know, shouts out all these conspiracy theories at the little basement window at anybody who walks by, you know, and everybody would be like, oh, that's crazy Alex. You know, they wouldn't give him the time of fucking day. And I thought about that yesterday and just how funny like that is. Like he should have been the guy that nobody listened to.
Also, period. Like, just to understand how he kind of like built so much and wasn't like rejected as crazy from the first place is because he started out not normal, but he started out relatively, you know, not insane. Like there were some conspiracy theories that he was kind of like right about, like, I don't know, like Bay of Pigs and shit like that. But like he didn't start out as crazy, which kind of gave him an advantage. And then
I have a feeling that he got he placated to the audience that he got. So he got an audience, so he just wanted to say what they wanted to hear. And then, does he believe it all? I doubt that he really believes it all.
I think he does.
You think he does?
I think he's a charlatan. I think he's an absolute charlatan.
But I think he also really does believe some of it too.
I think, he probably believes some of it, but I think he's mostly a charlatan.
Yeah, I mean, the charlatan aspect is him, you know, selling those fake products, right? Those weird supplements, and you know, that's definitely a charlatan aspect of the whole thing. You know, but if his ex-wife now is to be believed that he does really behave and believe those things, that's really the only glimpse that we can go off of. And I have no reason to believe that she's lying.
I have respect for his ex-wife, but understand that she is trying to paint him as completely insane, that he believes all this so she can get her child, which is understandable.
But he technically doesn't even have to do that because he comes off that way. You know what I'm saying?
Like, the courts granted him joint custody, or does he have custody or something like that?
He has custody.
Yeah, he has custody.
But also, like, if you watched his show, you can literally see, like, where he doesn't have much content for the day or whatever. You can literally watch the wheels spin in his head, turn in his head, and watch him make up shit on the spot. Like, there are several segments of this. Like, one time he talked about, like, what if Donald Trump got assassinated, and that was totally made up on the spot. Like, he's just doing outrageous shit for the audience. And like, he was talking about devil worshipping trans people, like reading books to kids and things like that. Like that, it was totally made up on the spot, and you can literally watch it in his eyes as the wheels in his mind turn. Like, oh shit, I've got to come up with content because this is like a 2-hour show.
I gotta think of some other bullshit to say. So Brad Bloom mentions, I have a feeling that this is going to further entrench his audience. Yeah, I mentioned that a little bit early on because he's going to be like the speech advocate martyr or whatever. I would have spent time debunking him on mainstream media regularly. Oh. Media doesn't or isn't interested in debunking anything to the point that he was a laughingstock even to his own people.
Can I just bring another example of his harassment?
Sure.
He promotes the moon landing was fake, which ended up with a ton of people fucking stalking and harassing Buzz Aldrin. There's like this awesome video from, I think it came out around like late last year, of like this I don't know what they're called, like the people who don't believe in the moon landing, but just harassing Buzz Aldrin, following him around and stuff while he was trying to enter a hotel, and he was with his daughter, and his daughter was literally trying to like hold him back from like punching this guy. And as soon as his daughter walked away, the guy starts like screaming in Buzz Aldrin's face, and Buzz knocks him the fuck out.
Good.
Milky, I guess this is a question. I think he means when, but he or she says, what the fuck are you going to talk about Saudi or not? We already discussed that story early on. That was the first one we addressed. And so, yeah. So if you're just joining us, we've already covered Saudi Arabia and Canada, that little conflict. Now, if you also are just tuning in, we are just discussing Alex Jones. And now is a good time to, if you want to talk with us about any of the two stories that we have covered so far, the number is 508-534-8585. All right. Are we ready to move on to Portland?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So this past weekend, there was another rally of the right-wing, basically Nazis. They called it a right-wing patriot prayer rally because, of course, hate and Nazism for some reason, and neo-Nazis do cover themselves in type of this religiosity because they believe that the Bible has ordained them the supreme ruler because all this white as snow bullshit nonsense that's in the Bible. So yeah, so they use that as a justification. Anyways, unfortunately, there was violence that did break out, and this was a lot of these videos that I have seen were basically initiated by the cops that were seen protecting or I guess standing alongside of, in front of the people, the right-wing neo-Nazis that had come to the rally. I saw horrible images on Twitter not today, but over the weekend, and one of which was a picture of somebody's head, a head injury that was sustained from I guess some sort of ballistic missile of some sort that had hit the person. It's supposed to be non-lethal. The person is alive, but of course that was a serious injury. It looked horrible. So if you're not interested, don't look for those things if you don't want to see them. But they bloodied that person's head when it was struck by a projectile. And a lot of these things.
Just to mention, if it weren't for the helmet that the protester was wearing, he would literally be dead.
Yeah, good point. And to go to your point, Lauren, I think there's been a lot of like bills and things proposed to assure that at least, I think we covered one on the story to assure that like the unmasking Antifa bill, for instance.
Yeah.
Basically specifying that people that participated in type of these counter protests had to basically be completely free of any type of masks. In some cases, I've seen bills where they couldn't wear helmets. They proposed these bills where these counter protesters were not allowed to wear helmets. Of course, again, that goes to your point. If that guy, I almost called him a kid, got hit without the helmet on, he would be dead. And so the weapons that these police are using are not necessarily non-lethal. They can result in serious injury and death, period.
Let me also say that the counter protesters were searched for weapons, but the right, they were not searched at all.
Yeah, I was going to get to that point, but yes, you're right. The counter protesters were searched for weapons, but the right wasn't at all, and in some cases the right were openly carrying too.
Yeah, I think there was some instance like stuff that they were openly carrying, like flagpoles, like they had a giant flagpole. I think that was confiscated by cops, but they didn't body search, and they didn't, what I mean? Like these, like I think I saw a picture of a guy who clearly had a gun in his back pocket.
Hey, I have Aaron on the phone, but he's calling about the free speech Alex Jones thing. Do you want to take it now, or do you want me to wait?
Let me finish this little blurb real fast, and then we'll take Aaron's call. How's that? Does that work? Okay. So one of the things that I've seen in a lot of media outlets has been this kind of equivalency again, this equivalency of these counter protesters with these far right, racist, violent assholes. And again, as Lauren said, the counter protesters did not have weapons. The right, the right rally racist assholes did. We're not searched. We're searched. And so even like when you start building the stage, there should not be an equivalency here whatsoever, because you have one group unarmed, another group armed and potentially armed. That all automatically there's a difference in dynamics that the media doesn't, that our mainstream media seems to be failing at, because they're going, all of these protesters on both sides swarmed in to fight. No, they were, in many cases, either the cops instigated something or it was started on the fucking right. And of course, the cops were protecting them. And it just goes to this fact that I think there was a study done not too long ago, and you will hear this on the left from on occasion, but there was actually a study that was done on this that demonstrated that cops are likely or are known to be actually members of these Nazi organizations in many cases. And it's just this that's the type of people that are particularly attracted to that profession. These, bowing down to the government type of people, even though they're anti-government when it comes to guns, of course. But they're fascist, and they are. And I just think that we need to just stop with this whole bullshit false equivalency. And I know that we on the left aren't necessarily responsible for that. And it's just primarily the quote unquote center, which is really not the center. So yeah, that's all I needed to say. And then we'll maybe come back to this story. But Aaron, what's up?
Oh yeah, just had a comment regarding the whole Alex Jones and free speech situation. So yeah, basically I had a statement about that and just a general question, and it kind of ties into what you were talking about currently, such as the protests that happen in Portland. So basically, I am in full agreement in regards to what happened to Alex Jones, the harassment and everything that he incited was, a good reason to why he should be suspended from those platforms. Which brings me to my next point, which is it's not only, Alex Jones, it's basically the hard right writ large in a considerable amount that I'm seeing of the right that uses this whole framing that they say about free speech, and they use it in bad faith usually, and they use this argument of free speech as a catalyst to incite violence, just as Alex Jones did to other people. For example, in Charlottesville, they had the whole argument of free speech and free assembly regarding that, saying, okay, we can come down and protest, because this is free speech, and I hope the left isn't against free speech. So and they allowed them to do that, which is fine. But the point of their whole framing around this is to incite in a way. So as soon as they came down to Charlottesville, you see them with different guns and armaments. And in one particular instance, they gained up on this one black man and attacked him and beat him and did all this chaos, under the pretext of, oh, well, we're going to be protesting and doing stuff in free assembly and, different things to advocate our cause under the guise of free speech, which they use that to basically incite violence in that way.
Oh, yeah.
Also, another example would be, just online where, different people from the hard right or the far right would be engaging with people, and it comes to a point where they actually dox people, put their information out there to attack them and to harass them, just like Alex Jones would do. He would seek his followers on them. So, example of this would be in one instance where a lady by the name of Tanya Gersh, she was a Jewish lady, and she was harassed online by a bunch of far right, individuals, and they come from this website, this far right neo-Nazi website. I think the Daily Storm is the name of the website. And at first they started to say, "Oh well, this is free speech. We can say what we want, and there's nothing really you can say against that." But then they started to amp up the attacks. Like I said, they doxed her house, they attacked her. And she had to move. She had to go to the ACLU, I believe, to press charges against these people. So these are just examples of people on this side of the political spectrum, use this argument of free speech, free assembly as a catalyst to eventually end up, inciting violence, inciting harassment. And these are the same people that say, "Oh, the left is violent," or "the left is against free speech," while they're doing all of these things at the end of the day. Also, just one final example of this, you may have heard of Charlie Kirk, which is another, he's not as far right as the other ones that I described, but he's part of Turning Point USA.
Yeah, the diaper man.
The SJWs on college campuses and so on and so forth. He's tried to say that they are against free speech, all the while when he is initiating against left-wing professors to try to shut them down. So it's
he helped build that professor list to try to say, like, all the left-wing professors that mention anything, put them on this list, and then they start getting harassed because, yeah, exactly. And he has no qualms.
So yeah, it just goes to the point of they try to use it in a Machiavellian way, in a way of saying, "Oh yeah, we're for free speech," but then they kind of take that and runs with that in order to harm other people, just as Alex Jones did. And going back to Alex Jones in particular, and his supporters, you may have heard or may not. It's been on the news recently, where a bunch of Trump supporters have shirts with the name Q and this and that. And this was like a conspiracy theory for what they call a QAnon conspiracy, which Alex Jones peddled on his online show before he got off the air, which basically the conspiracy was, Trump is trying to, get Hillary Clinton and Obama in the deep state, and Mueller is, Robert Mueller is his teammate to help take down the deep state and to insert some totalitarian system. This is just craziness. But you have people, in Trump rallies with these shirts, with the QAnon shirt, supporting this, right? And that goes back to the incitement thing, and which brings me to my last point, which after I saw the QAnon and the whole conspiracy thing, but I came to a point where I was like, okay, you know what? It's better to, I guess, instead of going to Trump supporters or the hard right voters, it's better just try to turn out the non-voters instead of the Trump supporters, because at this point it seems like it's a little bit too fringe and far gone. Not to say that some can't be reached, But just based off those examples that I gave you and all the division and the harassment that's been permitted, I would guess that would be a better strategy. Now, Ocasio-Cortez was talking about this as well. She was had a speech where she said, it's not about red to blue, it's about non-voter to voter, which is, I think, is a good strategy, seeing that this climate that's been coming about in America now. Now, I don't know if this would be the better strategy to go for, but I'm just wanting your opinion on that, is seeing how all of this is coming into play as far as with the Trump voters, even going even far in their conspiratorial thinking with the QA9 conspiracy theories and all this other stuff that's going on. So would you think that would be a good tactic to go for the non-voter instead of just the Trump voter? And also, what is your opinion on the whole, situation of the right using free speech as a guide to basically attack the left and harass, and basically, arguing in bad faith, the free speech, basically. So I just want your whole, opinion on that. What you think about that?
Okay. So, Aaron, I agree that the right does use this whole free speech advocacy as a weapon, and they specifically use it as a weapon against the left. This is not a new tactic. This is something that has been done throughout American history. It's just so normalized that nobody even mentions it. They get the right, the left does not, and it's primarily because we have a right-wing government, and we always have, that their voices get amplified a lot more. Luckily, the populace of the United States leans left, and that this will go on to your second point, that, yeah, we do need to worry about the people that sat at home and failed to show up for elections. They did so for a reason, whether they were working and couldn't make it to the ballot boxes. We need to allocate a day for voting so that they will not get penalized for for participating in democracy, whether it's from penalized out of their paycheck or whatever. The second point is that you also have to give them a reason to vote. If you have somebody like Hillary Clinton, for instance, in the last election, only 50% of eligible voters voted. Everybody else didn't show up. And I think that if you look at numbers and you break them down, typically the left isn't very good at showing up. Now, there's reasons for that, right? The left isn't very well represented in politics. They don't have a reason to vote. I've been there. I don't vote all the time myself because I need a reason to vote. I'm not one of those people. My non-vote behavior is more of a protest vote than anything. And then the other one is, of course, for those on the left that need help getting to the polls, we do need to allocate days to get to the polls. And one thing that I think the Democratic Party does not do or hasn't done well is assuring voting rights to people, right? They're upset about this Russia thing. They're upset about, people staying at home and not voting, about people flipping their votes or whatever, about Bernie Sanders supporters, whatever it is. But then they don't address that 50% of the people, again, that stayed home and didn't vote, which, those are the people that you can probably grab. Because
I wanted to add something too, is that so there's so many people that feel like my vote doesn't even matter. And then when you have shit that comes up like it did in 2016, yet you had, things that are just not addressed, like, it's not really rigged, but, we did go against our own policy and push for Hillary, but they need to address this, and they need to assure voters it wouldn't happen and that their votes will count. That's all. That's what matters.
Yeah. I mean, nothing's more corrosive to democracy than what we're seeing and how the DNC has behaved, right? At least, for all the shit that the RNC is, for all the shit that the Republicans are to me, in my mind, they at least had a fairer process. I mean, do you think those Republicans that were in charge wanted Trump to win? No. No way in hell did they want him to win. But he did, because their base was allowed to vote and vote fairly. Now you have superdelegates doing all the work for us, right, over on the Dem side. And that is so undemocratic. And they initiated that in the first place so that they initiated superdelegates in the first place, because this wasn't always a thing, to prevent what they considered extreme leftism from taking place in the party. Well, that extreme leftism is the country right now, or to them. It's really not extreme. It's very center. It's like super center compared to, if you look at Europe. If you look, 60% of people in the United States want a Medicare for our single payer system. If we had a democracy, we'd have that by now. I think something of 60 to 70% want a raise of the minimum wage, at least, right? Let alone a living wage. So they want a minimum wage increase, because it hasn't increased since, God, I don't know. It's been this way for a long time. So you see more progressivism and more left-leaning policies accepted and even wanted by the people. But again, that they are not represented in our government at all. And I lose faith some days, and I think I say that pretty often on this show. But yeah, I do. I lose faith in how well our government is handling the needs of the people, and for good reason, because they are not represented. They are not listened to. They are, if anything, shut out of the voting process, which is tragic. It's a tragedy. What are your thoughts? Did you have a thought? I thought I heard somebody. No?
I mean, I totally agree with what you're saying and stuff like that. If you want to circle back and talk a few minutes on the on the rally,
Thank you.
I kind of it's dry. The whole thing with the media with you have these cameras of the cops coming, and they're pushing on. It's not even just the people. They push on the media there too. So it's obviously the independent media, and maybe you can't tell who is. Sorry, hold on one second. You know what? Can you get back to me, because someone's calling in right now?
Sure. One thing that I wanted to note is that there are some articles that did describe, we're going back to the Portland story with counter protesters, things like that, did at least describe who some of the counter protesters. They mentioned that they were a group or coalition of labor unions and immigrant rights groups or advocates, democratic socialists, and things like that. And so again, there was no reason for them to equivocate here. These are very groups that are pretty upstanding for their communities. At least you've got like labor union groups. They're not there to like pick a fight. They're there to say like your belief, and I'm not going to stand for you to have a freedom of space here without getting some shit back. And I love the fact that there are counter protests. I think we need more of them. We need general protests on the left more, like real protests, not these nice little marches. I think that, you guys know how I feel about marches. I think I've said it so many times.
Marches they're performative, in my opinion. And also, there are a lot of socialists and democratic socialists, but like a lot of the, actual Antifa, Black Bloc, those are anarcho-communists who deserve a lot of credit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they didn't mention them in some of the articles, the Antifa group.
Right.
I don't dislike walking. Brad Bloom is like, I know how you dislike walking, Amanda. Actually, maybe I've said that at one point. Maybe I did mention that. I don't necessarily dislike it. I agree with Lauren, though. I do think that they're more performative. Now, there are some people that cannot go to protests, right? And they feel like seeing that many people show up is it makes them feel not as isolated and alone. And so I covered a march recently on Actify. I live streamed it. It was for what was it? Immigration rights against like ICE. And I had a friend stop me afterwards who was working that day. And I didn't know she worked where the march was. And she's like, I loved seeing all these people here. It made me feel, like there was some solidarity. So it's sometimes good as a performative show, but it doesn't really, I don't think that it does anything as far as improving the situation in the long run, unfortunately.
I have Andrew on the phone. I think he's going back kind of towards the Alex Jones story again too. Sorry. All right, Andrew.
Milky, do you believe that Canada have the right to force their value on other countries? Canada was not forcing their values on another country. They said a tweet. That's all.
Okay, Amanda, are you ready for Andrew now?
Yes, I am.
Sorry, Andrew, go ahead.
Andrew, are you there?
Oh, I'm sorry. That was my fault. I had Andrew muted on my end. Andrew, sorry. Totally my fault.
Okay, we got it. We got it. What's up, Andrew?
No worries. Hey, there's a running theme is everything going on for that we're seeing, and that's supposed to be a process with every single issue we're talking about today. Right. There's supposed to be transparency, and people are supposed to have some expectation of a fair handling, whether it's on social media, right? We know that these social media companies don't consistently apply their rules. We know their process isn't transparent, and we know a lot of the times their appeal processes aren't even existent. Right? Anyone who's had issues on Twitter would know immediately that it's completely up to the private entity how they want to apply it. Right. And these social media platforms are where the majority of public discourse happens now. So the fact that you're leaving control over the dispute process and who doesn't get to be suppressed or speak freely or whatever, that is a massive issue on its own in terms of process. Right, then you take a look. Alex Jones should have been banned a long time ago. He's been inciting violence and using hate speech in breach of the terms of service of the platforms he was on a long time ago. The issue shouldn't be that he was kicked off. It should be, why did it take this long? Absolutely. Right? Yeah. Right. It appears to be a coordinated effort on these platforms, probably as a PR stunt to try and improve their credibility with the public. Because especially in Europe and other places, Facebook is facing very real possibility of some heavy regulatory actions being taken against them after the Cambridge Analytica thing. So they're probably trying to build a public campaign to say, no, just let us do what we want. It's better that way. And that may not work for them. The process in Europe is slow, but I believe it's moving onward, whether they like it or not. Now, you take a look at the process with the protest in Portland. There's clear evidence that a cop aimed a grenade launcher at a guy's head, pulled the trigger, then grinned when he hit the guy and laughed with the cop standing next to him. It was an intentional shot. It was a weapon being used against the way the cop was supposedly trained to use it and against the way the weapon is designed to be used. And there's no process. Where's the accountability, right? That they are selective in how they apply these processes. So what's going on is people in power control whether or not the process is used, and that's the problem, the corruption of process. If you've got any issue and you take it to court or you take it to a process or whatever, that one of the fundamental, like foundational concepts is supposed to be that everyone is equal in the face of that process, whether it's a legal system or a disputes process or something through your government, right? And the fact of the matter is, in this corporatocracy we live in, that's not how it works. people in power decide whether or not the process gets to happen, right? You see this over and over and over and over again. You'll get people who want to make a court challenge, and they've let them put in private mediators instead of an actual court process. You'll get them put a paywall to the justice system where if you try to take a corporation to court, they will hit you with a million different legal procedures that cost a lot of money. That mean that basically if you're poor, you can't afford justice, which is counter to the way it's supposed to work. So every single issue we're seeing, the running theme we're seeing, is that there is a corruption of our process by the powerful. Now, Alex Jones being deplatformed is probably a net good, but the power being exerted in a coordinated fashion by those media monopolies is also bad, right? We can do both bad, right? So if we had a cop set a Nazi on fire in the street and face no consequence, one less Nazi is a good thing, but the fact that the cop can do that without getting in trouble is also a bad thing, right?
Right. Yes.
We can have lots of bad all happening at the same time. Now, Alex Jones should have been deplatformed from these platforms a long time ago. The fact it took them this long is wrong. And where is the capacity for the public to go to Facebook and say, we don't like your process. We want to see what's going on with your process. We want a transparent way for us to know that you're doing the right thing. And it just doesn't exist, right?
Absolutely.
Now, I think that people like you, Glenn Greenwald, and others, Michael Tracy, and that, they're the ones screaming. We've been screaming about this for a long time. And unfortunately, David Dole ended up being quote-tweeted by Greenwald, and that's probably going to play out differently to what I think Greenwald had in mind. But these really are significant issues. I mean, we've got evidence from plenty of protests where the cops are protecting white supremacists and neo-Nazis. The cops are not consistently treating everyone at the process. So where is the public capacity to go to the chief of police in Portland, whose last name is Outlaw, which I find a little funny, and go, hang on, we've got an issue with the way your cops are protecting and serving. And what happens is that the chief goes, no, it was a rough thing. We thought there was going to be violence. We think everything is just fine, and you can go jump. Like, then you go, well, maybe we should sue them. Well, that takes money, and who's got the money to do that? If you're talking about the protesters at the thing, where's the public support so the guy that got shot in the head with a flashbang grenade can sue the police, right? He's going to have to go to a private lawyer who's going to take the majority of his payout if he stands a chance at all of ever taking it to court. The police department doesn't suffer direct consequences if they're found to be in breach. There's no criminality. A lot of the police unions negotiate to insulate their members from any kind of consequence for bad behaviour. The entire process doesn't self-correct, right? And we need to have serious conversations about the actual processes going on here. Now, this is partly why we need our lawmakers to be progressive, right? Because we're seeing many examples of systemic failure in our system, right? The check and balances in our system have been corroded for 50, 100 years by, if you're really going to take it back, it's by capital, right? Capital says that process might apply to me, so I'm going to corrupt that so that it can only work to increase my power and influence. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing it in police departments. We're seeing it in social media. You're seeing it with print media, right? The state of the Washington Post or the New York Times or their duty as the fourth estate is influenced through capital, right? Fox News was taken to court because they were lying directly on their platform, and they used the First Amendment to defend their right to lie. They had a lawyer get up in court and say it was their First Amendment right to lie to the American people. It was upheld. Now, they should have had their broadcast. They're a regulated entity, right? there's nothing in the First Amendment that says you get to broadcast.
Right.
You can say whatever you like, but they could have withdrawn Fox News's regulatory capacity that use their broadcast license. The second anyone brings up the fact that the broadcast license is not a God-given right, they really don't want the option of losing their. I actually think that's a device that should be used. If you say you're news, if you say you're a news channel, you put an anchor there and you report a story that's not true, not in line with journalistic ethics, right? You should be taken off the air, right? It should cost you money. Your business model, and everyone should know that you're lying, right? That's in the public interest. And yeah, so it's like I said, we need to start talking about transparent and fortified systems for dealing with the corruption of our public services and these things that are but there's a reason you regulate cabs. There's a reason you regulate everything else. It's in the public interest. Well, the public interest right now would be served by some transparency, some accountability from the providers of the services that we use, whether it's information services, whether it's news services, whatever, and it's just not there, right? This is kind of wonky. People go to sleep talking about process, but it's coming out. Like I said, those cops avoiding justice. That's this issue, right? The New York Times screwing Bernie or the Washington Post, that's this issue, right? The Alex Jones thing, that's this issue. The fact that they let white supremacists continue to spew their hate because they have a billionaire backer, but they shut down someone on the left having political talk that's actually in line with the terms of service. That is this issue, right? Our government has a job, and part of that job is serving the public interest and protecting normal citizens and individuals from large entities like corporations, and that is failing right now. And it affects everything. Anyway, I'm stepping back from my soapbox now.
Yeah, but you're totally right, and I think I mentioned the way that these social media companies seem to apply their terms of services so differently depending on who you are, like how many followers you may have and things like that, and there is so little transparency. I mentioned this with Sally Albright when the whole bot thing happened, and she basically created these fake accounts and then used accounts of deceased people to basically spew propaganda for the Democrats, the center right. But yeah, she did that and then was not removed from Twitter, even though that violated their terms of services. I mean, they say in there that you cannot impersonate other users. You cannot take other people's accounts, which she did. Granted, they were dead, but she didn't have permission to those accounts. And I mean, that's despicable behavior. But again, why is it that somebody that may even do the same thing or may use like a bot, they get kicked off, but then she doesn't?
Well, the difference is like all her bots were suspended. Like those accounts are no longer there. They're completely wiped out.
Yeah, well, the accounts aren't there anymore, which is great, but they weren't real people to begin with. She was the real person behind that, and so she should have gotten, per their terms of services, she should have gotten removed from the platform, but she did not. And yeah, it's very questionable. And we do have a government that basically works for and in line with the corporations and all of these media companies and things like that. They do not serve the public interest. They aren't interested in serving the public good. I mean, look at them deregulating all of these things like, sorry, my dog, but look at them going through these deregulation measures, more deregulation measures, trying to basically say that, cut car industry carbon standards, carbon emission standards to basically placate big oil, so that they create, I guess, less efficient cars, thus utilizing more oil and gasoline, which means more money in big oil's pocket, of course. But again, that has a consequence on our air quality and climate change. That's a serious problem. But again, they're not there to serve the public good. Serving the public good would make sure that nobody dies because of pollutants in the air and water. They're not interested in that. And it's despicable. I don't know how to reverse it because, again, I'm looking at people in our chat going through all of these. I'm seeing progressive politicians or progressive candidates losing. Their races are at least down in a lot of these races that are going on today. And it's terrible. Because those are the people that are interested in serving the public good. But again, whether it's because people don't get the information, which I think is a large part, the media doesn't cover progressive, more left-wing candidates because they are the biggest threat to their power. It's horrible. It's very saddening. It's saddening. Is that a word? Plantastic Life mentioned that our federal representatives are board members for the United States of America, Inc. Pretty much. I mean, there's been many studies now that have come out, one famous one from Harvard, that did confirm that the United States is an oligarchy. It's not a democracy. And meaning that basically there's a handful of people that are running the government, and that a lot of the times that these handful of people also serve corporations. There's kind of the corporations dictate to the government what to do. You've kind of got an oligarchy plus courtocracy. There it is. And nobody's serving the will of the people, and it's sad. Yeah. How are we doing today?
Well, it's 9:17 on my end. So probably we can wrap it up.
All right. All right. So guys, thank you so much for joining us today. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel, and also please consider making a small donation to our Patreon page. Again, it helps keep the light keeps our lights on, keeps us going, keeps us giving you guys some stories and things like that. So if you could, we also have a PayPal account if you want to instead not use Patreon, but go kind of a one-time donation to us. You can use it that way. And that is linked in the description box below this broadcast. And don't forget, if you liked it, please like our video. Please share our content. Especially if you can't donate, please share. And that's all I've got for today. Anyone else?
Just saying bye.
All right. Bye, guys. Thanks.